Welcome to the Stellar Hour. Maybe it'll only be about 15 minutes, not a whole hour, but a quarter hour. There are some things I've been thinking about that I've been wanting to share. There's so much happening today. I think from my standpoint, it's the lack of what's happening that is surprising to me. I went out tonight and in Arizona here, things are starting to open up, and yet people aren't out and people are wearing masks. It's really amazing to me because it's quite warm here, and we haven't had a lot of deaths from coronavirus, which people now refer to as COVID more, which it always interests me is like how the names of things change. Um, it makes me question what's really happening and how we're really seeing a revelation of humanity. Like for myself, I'll say it never occurred to me that people are really as afraid as they are. That people could believe a narrative as they're believing today. So if we think about it, every year would be a pandemic, right? Because we're just experiencing the normal flu, except this year they've called it a pandemic and they shut down the world. I mean, who could ever imagine? I think this is one of the things that fascinates me the most about this is that I don't know anybody who called this. And yet now what I start seeing is the prognosticators out there, the people who are like the typical conspiracy theorists who are talking about what's going to be happening next. And I think to myself, I have gained an incredible sense of humility through this and recognizing that I don't know. And in this place that I'm in right now, by not knowing, I'm more open and I'm actually discerning more than I think I did before, which is a very humbling experience. I realize that, like myself, like others, I could never have anticipated this. And I was a person who thought to myself, oh, after Easter, this is going to end. Things are going to go back to normal. And I can't stand this whole notion of what's the new normal, because it's no different than using a word of social distancing or pandemic. Certain words that are being used, the new normal. Another word that's coming out is fragile, and I find that really interesting. The fragility of human life. Really, notice how there's no strength being emphasized. Notice the types of words being used. I'm going to really invite you to notice this. RE words like resilience, even a new drug being used, and I'm going to totally butcher it, remdesivir or something like that. There are so many RE words being used right now. And those RE words are always a return to the past. And if you listen to marketers today, they'll tell you that things are going back to prior archetypes, and it may not always be good. Interesting, huh? Why would that happen? People always think that we are moving forward or we're progressing, but are we? What are we progressing towards? Being transhuman? Are we progressing towards being more controlled? In fact, I have to find something here. I was listening to one of my, well, he's not actually a favorite, but somebody who I listen to a lot, and he's describing what we can expect moving forward, and he speaks about this crisis, this danger that we're in right now, and the opportunity, and what's emerging as a result of it. What new imprints are being formed? Well, I understand that that's a really important wording, because when he says what new imprints are being formed, that's basically what happens when you're first born, and how you develop your personality in relationship with your mother and father, but mostly your mother when you're born. And so he's saying what new cultural codes are emerging as a result of this. So this is really profound. People have lived in wars before. I haven't. I can't even imagine what it would be like for people who have lived through wars. We're living through a different kind of war right now. We're living through a mimetic war. We're living through a war of the mind. We're living through a cultural war. We're living through a war where our most primal and unconscious needs are being manipulated in ways we can't even imagine. And I think this is a really important part to it, because many people can't imagine what's being done because we're limited in our imagination. It's almost as if, they can't really be doing that. They're doing this, but they've overplayed their hand. And I'll say to people who bring that up to me, they're overplaying their hand and you saw this happening? No, they're not overplaying their hand. They understand how it works, but we don't. And so here's the thing. It's about being more open to recognize you probably aren't going to know. And that's a very humbling place to be. How could you know? How could I know? It makes me really consider, what's life? I mean, what are we doing here and why? And how do these things continually happen? I mean, when you look at it, human beings don't really seem to change much. I mean, the circumstances of our lives change, where we live, how we live changes, but what people experience inside really doesn't change a lot. And I mean, I can think about like what I've been experiencing at work. I work in a very unusual environment, kind of similar to the one that I worked in before. And there is a lot of game playing and not a lot of emotional maturity. And so people tend to play the blame game a lot. So instead of communicating directly with people, games are played. It's so much fun. Not. And it brings up a lot of anxiety. And I've been reflecting to myself, as we're living in a time of incredible anxiety, how I am experiencing myself in this. And I really don't like it. I don't like what I'm seeing about myself. In fact, I've had to reflect back on how am I showing up today versus how I think I'm showing up. Where's the reality of how I'm being in the world today, and what is it demanding from me? Where are the places that I really need to be paying more attention, and what I need to be seeing about my own self? And I think to myself as I reflect on that, yuck. I mean, what makes it so hard to see ourselves? I've really been thinking about this. It's like, I like to think I'm pretty open. And as I've been reflecting on things, it's like, okay, I am being open. I'll tell you, I don't like it. I don't like some of the things that I see about myself. It's hard. I recognize that I can be more anxious than I'd like to think I am, and I can be more affected by my environment. And it's really important, I think, for myself, I'm not saying for you, but I'm saying for myself, paying attention to that. I'm noticing how my environment is, I was going to say causing me, but it's really not causing me because I'm doing it to myself. How my environment affects me such that it's easier for me to be more anxious, and it's more challenging to be grounded and to see myself. And as I recognize this about myself, the energy that it takes to see myself, it takes a lot of energy. And this is why what's happening, I think today is happening. We're being encouraged to focus our attention on what's out there, what's being done to us. Oh my God, Bill Gates. Bill Gates is an actor, no different than Tom Hanks is a man who's playing the role of Tom Hanks, who's in movies, right? These people are actors. Nothing has become more clear to me lately that when they say all the world's a stage, it really is. They give us these people such that we don't consider anything else besides it. So we think about, Bill Gates, he contributed $10 million. He's behind this vaccine. He's like, Bill Gates, we got to get rid of him. He needs to be brought to justice. He's just an actor playing a role. And if it wasn't Bill Gates, it would be somebody else. Because people are always so focused on who's the boogeyman out there. And what I've realized through looking at my own self, I can be my own boogeyman. I'm my own boogeyman by allowing my environment to affect me in such a way that I'm not present with my own self. I am caught up in what's happening, and I'm not thinking clearly. And I said to myself last week, bitch slap. I'm like, what am I doing? It's like I am giving all of my energy to what's happening in the world within me, like what I'm experiencing, and I'm allowing it to basically like lead me on a chain. Like if I'm being walked like a dog, it's like I'm being walked. But wait a minute, I know I have the power to do something different, and I don't necessarily always like that. It's hard. So I have to go back and say, how am I being complicit? How am I the cause of my effect? And that is not easy to do. Sometimes it's really hard to see yourself. And this is why it helps to have a friend you can ask for feedback around you. Like, what do you notice? And so I have been engaging that and asking people for feedback. Like, what do you notice about how I'm relating to myself and relating to my world right now? And man, it sucks to get that feedback, because it can feel like a one-down situation. However, if I'm not willing to get that feedback, I'm not willing to engage in it, I'm going to keep repeating the same patterns, or for how I show up, I'll end up being more anxious, and my anxiety can distort what I'm experiencing happening. Things can feel more threatening than they are when I am experiencing more threat. Another thing that comes up is when we're feeling more threatened, and it's not physical threat, it's emotional threat. It's a threat to who am I? Am I being perceived as competent? For me, that's really important, because I am competent, and I'm working in a situation where the people I work with are always challenging not just me, with each other on these things, and that's another important thing that I have to pay attention to. It's not just me. This is how people relate to each other in the work environment that I'm in. And so I've had to recognize, separate myself, don't feel like such a victim to it, and realize this is the norm, and it's meant to make people feel insecure. It's meant to create power through weakness. It's an unusual thing, isn't it? Because we think that wouldn't happen. There's a real power through people who are victims, because they manipulate, and it's hard to discern through manipulations. And these people who manipulate do so because they really don't know themselves. Something that really comes to me is that there's this notion in attachment theory that to the degree a mother knows her child, meaning that she can differentiate herself from her child, and she can see her child's personality and needs are different than her own, and she can be sensitively attuned, responsive, consistent, that child then can develop themselves separate from the mother. And that child has a sense that, oh, my mom gets me. See, this is why when people say, oh my God, you get me, it's like such an incredible feeling. And I think this is what probably leads for people to have affairs or get divorced, is that they don't feel like they're being gotten. Because humans have an incredible need to have the experience of mind and mind. I don't fully understand all of it now. I talk about it a lot, this concept of mind and mind, and how it is that we feel, when we feel understood, we feel safe. It's really important. And we're living in a time of social distancing, where distancing ties into an insecure attachment style of what they call avoidant dismissive, people who tend to deactivate and not reach out to others. So we're being encouraged to deactivate from others and to attach to technology, attach to alcohol, attach to Netflix, attach to things that aren't human, as a way of compensating and substituting for human needs. And that human need of connection, and that connection is that the mind and mind experience, that you get me, that we're connected, is so important. It's where empathy comes from. can a person really empathize with another if they don't have their own mind, if they don't even know their own mind? If I don't know my mind, how can I know your mind? If I'm not willing to engage in my own mind and look at myself, can I really know you or your mind? So when we look today, this whole notion of empathy is being so manipulated. Well, if people are acting in a more insecure way, how can they really be empathic? How are they really empathizing with another? What's really happening? So are they really being empathic? I don't think so. I think it's disingenuous. I don't think people really are being empathic. I think that they're mimicking what they think they should do, and then other people feel that. So it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel like there's a true connection. And that makes people feel even more separate and more alone than they're already feeling right now. And so it's really important to grasp this concept. I'll ask you, so when do you feel most understood? Who do you feel understood by? What are the things that make you feel understood? It's not about giving your power to another person, but it's recognizing the interdependence that we experience. Because, if I'm a hermit living by myself out in the mountains, I'm not going to have this experience. Some people can say that might be a peak experience. I kind of question that. The likelihood is that we do need each other, and to the degree we can recognize that and recognize our vulnerability around that and have boundaries and not give ourselves away as a result of our need for this, what happens if you become more clear around that? And I think that's really something to reflect on. And that's where I'm going to leave us tonight, is just reflect back on, how does it feel to feel understood? How does it feel like when you get me? It's a great feeling. So I look forward to speaking to you soon. Good night.